Sarah Chen adjusted her evening gown for the 10th time in 5 minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she checked her reflection in the backstage mirror. The charity auction was about to begin, and she was one of the volunteers who had agreed to participate in the date auction to raise funds for the children's hospital. She never imagined she would be standing here, about to walk onto a stage where strangers would bid on a dinner date with her. The noise from the main hall grew louder as more guests arrived. Through the curtain, she could see the elegant ballroom, filled with well-dressed men and women, all holding their bidding paddles and sipping champagne. The cause was worthy. The pediatric wing desperately needed new equipment, but Sarah couldn't shake the nervous feeling in her stomach. Next up, we have Sarah Chen, a pediatric nurse at our very own children's hospital, announced the auctioneer. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, the bright lights making it difficult to see the faces in the audience clearly. She smiled and waved, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. The bidding started slowly. A few polite raises here and there, nothing too exciting. Sarah tried to maintain her composure, even as she wondered if anyone would bid high enough to make this worthwhile for the hospital. The amount was climbing steadily, but modestly, when suddenly, a strong voice from the back of the room called out a bid that was 3 times higher than the current amount. The entire room fell silent. Sarah squinted into the crowd, trying to see who had made such a generous offer. All she could make out was a tall figure in a dark suit standing near the back wall. Something about his posture seemed familiar, but the stage lights made it impossible to see his face clearly. The auctioneer seemed as surprised as everyone else. "Do I hear any other bids?" he asked, his voice carrying a note of excitement. The room remained quiet. No one seemed willing to challenge such a substantial bid. "Going once, going twice," the auctioneer continued. Sarah felt her heart racing. Who was this mysterious bidder? And why had he offered so much? She strained to get a better look at him, but he remained in the shadows at the edge of the room. "Sold!" announced the auctioneer, and the crowd erupted in applause. As Sarah walked off the stage, her mind raced with questions. She had participated in the auction to help raise money for the hospital, never expecting such a dramatic moment. The event coordinator, Mrs. Kamasaid-Dapien Williams, rushed over to her with a clipboard and a huge smile. "That was incredible, dear. The highest bid of the evening so far," she gushed. "Let me get you connected with your bidder." Sarah nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. She followed Mrs. Williams through the crowd, weaving between groups of chatting guests. They made their way toward the back of the room where the mysterious bidder had been standing. But when they arrived, he was nowhere to be seen. "That's strange. Mrs. Wakai," Williams muttered, looking around. "He was just here a moment ago." They spent several minutes searching the ballroom, asking other guests if they had seen the man who made the winning bid. Some remembered seeing him, describing him as tall with dark hair and an expensive suit, but no one seemed to know who he was or where he had gone. "Well, this is unusual," Miss Williams said, frowning at her clipboard. "He did provide his contact information when he registered for bidding, though. His name is Marcus Rivera." The name sent a jolt through Sarah's body. Marcus Rivera. She knew that name, though she hadn't heard it in over 5 years. Her mind immediately traveled back to a rainy Tuesday evening in downtown Seattle, when her life had taken a dramatic and dangerous turn. She had been working late at the clinic, finishing up paperwork after a particularly busy day. It was past 9 o'clock when she finally locked up and headed to her car in the parking garage. The rain was coming down hard, and she was focused on getting to her car quickly without getting soaked. She didn't notice the footsteps behind her until it was almost too late. The attack came suddenly. A man had grabbed her purse and shoved her hard against a concrete pillar. She had hit her head and fallen to the ground, dazed and scared. The attacker was rifling through her purse when another figure appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. Sarah remembered the sound of the fight more than the sight of it. She had been too disoriented to see clearly, but she heard the impact of fists, the grunt of effort, and then the sound of running footsteps as her attacker fled into the night. When she finally focused her eyes, a man was kneeling beside her, his face filled with concern. He was young, maybe in his late 20s, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He had helped her to her feet, insisted on driving her to the hospital to get checked for a concussion, and stayed with her until her sister arrived. "I'm Marcus," he had told her in the emergency room waiting area. "Marcus Rivera. I'm just glad I was walking by when I heard you call out." They had talked for hours that night while waiting for test results. She learned that he was in the military stationed at a nearby base and that he was originally from Texas. He had an easy way of talking that made her feel safe and comfortable, even after such a traumatic experience. But when the doctor finally cleared her to go home, Marcus had already left. The nurse said he had been called away on some kind of emergency. Sarah had wanted to thank him properly, maybe even get his phone number, but he was gone. She tried to find him afterward, even contacted the military base, but was told he had been transferred. She never saw or heard from him again. Until now. "Sarah, are you all right?" Mrs. Williams's voice brought her back to the present. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Sarah managed to say, though her voice sounded shaky even to her own ears. "It's just, I think I might know him. From a long time ago." Mrs. Williams raised her eyebrows with interest. "Really? Well, that's wonderful. It'll make your dinner date much more comfortable then." He left instructions that he would contact you directly to arrange the details. Sarah nodded absently, still processing the flood of memories and emotions. Could it really be the same Marcus Rivera who had saved her all those years ago? And if it was, why had he disappeared from the auction without saying anything to her? Why the elaborate gesture of bidding on her in the first place? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Sarah tried to participate in the remaining auction activities and socialize with the other guests, but her mind kept wandering back to that night 5 years ago and the man who had come to her rescue. She remembered how safe she had felt talking to him, how he had seemed genuinely concerned about her well-being, and how disappointed she had been when he vanished from her life as quickly as he had entered it. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Sarah found herself looking around the ballroom one more time, hoping to catch another glimpse of Marcus. But he was definitely gone. She gathered her purse and wrap, said goodbye to Mrs. Williams, and headed for the exit. The parking garage brought back memories of that night 5 years ago, but this time she wasn't afraid. She was filled with anticipation and curiosity instead. As she reached her car, she noticed a small envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened it carefully. Inside was a simple business card with a phone number and a handwritten note. "Sarah, I never forgot you or that night. I hope you'll give me a chance to explain why I disappeared. Call me when you're ready." Marcus Sarah stood in the quiet parking garage, holding the note and feeling a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name. Excitement, nervousness, curiosity, and something else, a feeling of fate or destiny that she had never really believed in before. She carefully tucked the card into her purse and drove home, her mind racing with possibilities and questions. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the business card on her nightstand. She had so many questions for Marcus Rivera. Why had he left so suddenly that night 5 years ago? How had he found out about the auction? Had he been looking for her all this time? Or was this just a coincidence? And most importantly, what did he want from her now? She thought about calling him immediately, but something held her back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was fear. Fear that the man she remembered so fondly might not live up to her memories. Fear that whatever had caused him to disappear before might cause him to disappear again. But as the hours passed and sleep remained elusive, Sarah realized that her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She had spent 5 years wondering about Marcus Rivera, and now he was reaching out to her. Whatever his reasons for leaving before, whatever had brought him back into her life now, she needed to know. She owed it to herself, and maybe to him too, to at least hear what he had to say. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of determination. She had made her decision during those sleepless hours. She would call Marcus Rivera and agree to meet with him, but she would do it on her terms, in a public place where she felt comfortable and safe, and she would ask all the questions that had been haunting her for 5 years. She picked up the business card from her nightstand and studied it again in the morning light. The phone number had a local area code, which meant he was here in the city, at least for now. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Sarah got ready for work as usual, but she carried the business card with her, tucked safely in her wallet. Throughout her shift at the hospital, she found herself thinking about the call she would make later. She practiced what she might say, how she might sound casual and confident rather than nervous and eager. But every time she imagined hearing his voice again, her practiced composure crumbled a little. Marcus Rivera had been more than just a good Samaritan who helped her in a time of need. In the few hours they had spent together in that hospital waiting room, she had felt a connection with him that she had never quite been able to explain or forget. Now he was back, and apparently he hadn't forgotten her either. The question was, what happened next? Sarah waited until her lunch break to make the call. She found a quiet corner in the hospital cafeteria and pulled out Marcus's business card with trembling fingers. She had rehearsed what she would say dozens of times, but now that the moment had arrived, her mind went blank. She dialed the number and waited. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Marcus Rivera. The sound of his voice transported her instantly back to that night 5 years ago. It was deeper now, more mature, but unmistakably the same gentle tone that had comforted her in the emergency room. "Marcus, this is Sarah Chen," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "From the auction last night." There was a brief pause, and she could almost hear him smile through the phone. "Sarah, I was hoping you would call. Thank you for reaching out. I have to admit, I'm curious, she said, finding her confidence. That was quite a dramatic way to get my attention. And then you disappeared before I could even see who had bid on me. Marcus chuckled softly. I know it must seem strange. The truth is, I wasn't sure you would remember me, and I didn't want to put you in an uncomfortable position in front of all those people if you didn't. Remember you? Sarah couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. Marcus, you saved my life. Of course I remember you. What I don't understand is why you disappeared that night without saying goodbye. There was a longer pause this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was quieter, more serious. That's a conversation I'd rather have in person, if you're willing. I owe you an explanation and a proper apology. Sarah felt her heart racing. Okay, where and when? There's a coffee shop called Luna's Brew on 5th Street. Do you know it? It's small, quiet. We could meet there tomorrow evening, around 6? Sarah knew the place. It was cozy and intimate, the kind of spot where people went for serious conversations. That works for me. Sarah, Marcus said before she could hang up, I want you to know that bidding on you at the auction, it wasn't just about seeing you again. I believe in the cause. The Children's Hospital does important work. I know, Sarah replied softly. I work there, in the pediatric ward. Another pause. I know you do. I've been keeping track. The admission sent a chill through Sarah. You've been watching me? Not watching, Marcus said quickly. That came out wrong. I mean, I've been aware of what you've been doing with your life, your career, your involvement with the hospital. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Sarah didn't know how to respond to that. Part of her was flattered, part of her was unsettled, and part of her was simply curious about how he had been keeping tabs on her life. I'll see you tomorrow at 6, she said finally. Sarah, wait. Before you go, I want you to know that I never stopped thinking about you, about that night, about the conversation we had. You made an impression on me that I've never forgotten. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the cafeteria staring at her untouched sandwich. Her coworkers chatted around her, but she barely heard them. Tomorrow evening couldn't come fast enough, and yet she almost dreaded it. So many questions, so many possibilities for disappointment or revelation. The next day dragged by slowly. Sarah found herself checking the clock constantly, her mind wandering from her patients to the upcoming meeting. She changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple blue dress that made her feel confident but not overdressed. Luna's Brew was exactly as she remembered it. Warm lighting, comfortable chairs, and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee. She arrived a few minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where they could talk privately. She ordered a latte and tried to calm her nerves. At exactly 6 o'clock, Marcus walked through the door. Sarah recognized him immediately, though he had changed in the 5 years since she'd seen him. He was taller than she remembered, broader across the shoulders, and there was something different about the way he carried himself. More confident, perhaps, or maybe more guarded. But his eyes were the same, kind and intelligent, with a hint of sadness that she remembered from that night in the hospital. He spotted her immediately and walked over, his expression uncertain. Sarah? Marcus. They looked at each other for a moment, the weight of 5 years and unanswered questions hanging between them. Then Marcus smiled, and suddenly he was the same person who had comforted her in her darkest moment. You look wonderful, he said, taking the seat across from her. Even more beautiful than I remembered. Sarah felt herself blush. You look good too. Different, but good. A waitress came over and Marcus ordered coffee. When they were alone again, an awkward silence settled over their table. So, Sarah said finally, 5 years. That's a long time to keep track of someone you barely knew. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from that night long ago. That's just it, Sarah. I didn't barely know you. In those few hours we spent together, I felt like I got to know the real you. The way you talked about your work, your dreams, your family. The way you handled what had happened to you with such strength and grace. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. I was falling for you even then, and that scared me. Sarah felt her breath catch. Scared you? Why? Marcus was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee cup. Because I knew I was going to have to leave. The next morning, actually. I had received orders for deployment to Afghanistan. I was supposed to ship out in less than 12 hours. Sarah stared at him. Afghanistan? A 6-month mission that turned into 18 months. By the time I got back to the States, I'd been transferred to a different base. I tried to find you, but you'd moved, and the hospital wouldn't give me any information about former patients. Former patients? But I wasn't. No, but you'd been treated there that night, so they had privacy policies. I understood, but it made finding you nearly impossible. Sarah felt a mix of relief and frustration. Marcus, I tried to find you too. I called the base, but they said you'd been transferred. If I had known you were deployed, would it have made a difference? Marcus asked quietly. Sarah considered the question seriously. I don't know. Maybe. At least I would have understood why you left so suddenly. I spent months wondering if I had said something wrong, if you had just been being polite by staying with me. Marcus reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Sarah, you didn't do anything wrong. That night with you was one of the most real, most meaningful conversations I'd had in years. Leaving you was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. The warmth of his touch sent familiar feelings through Sarah's body. She had almost forgotten how safe she felt with him. What happened to you over there? She asked softly. Marcus's expression darkened slightly. The usual things that happen in war zones. I lost some good friends. I saw things that no one should have to see. I came back different. Different how? Harder, I guess. More cautious about getting close to people. I spent a lot of time in therapy, working through some issues. It took me a while to feel like myself again. Sarah nodded, understanding. And now? How are you now? Marcus smiled, and for a moment he looked like the young soldier she had met 5 years ago. Now I'm better. I have a civilian job working as a security consultant for businesses. I'm settled in one place. And when I saw your name in the auction program, he paused. Sarah, seeing your name again felt like a sign. Like maybe I was being given a second chance to do things right. Do things right? To not run away. To not let fear make my decisions for me. To tell you how I felt that night and how I've felt ever since. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. Marcus, I know this is a lot, he said quickly. I know 5 years is a long time, and you probably have a life, maybe someone special. I'm not expecting anything from you. I just wanted you to know the truth about why I left, and to thank you. Thank me? For what? For being the bright spot in one of the darkest periods of my life. For giving me something beautiful to think about during those long nights overseas. For showing me what it felt like to connect with someone on a deeper level. Sarah wiped at her eyes, overwhelmed by the emotion in his voice. I don't have someone special, she said quietly. I've dated, but no one ever made me feel the way you did that night. Marcus's eyes searched her face. Really? Sarah nodded. I compared everyone to you, Marcus, to the memory of you, to the way you made me feel safe and understood. It wasn't fair to them, and it probably wasn't fair to me, but I couldn't help it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their mutual confession settling between them. So where do we go from here? Marcus asked finally. Sarah smiled through her tears. Well, you did win a dinner date with me at the auction. I think the least I can do is honor that commitment. Marcus laughed, and the sound filled Sarah with warmth. I'd like that. But I want to take things slowly, if that's okay with you. I want to get to know you again, the person you are now, not just the memory I've been carrying around. I'd like that too, Sarah agreed. But, Marcus, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If you're going to disappear again, if there's any chance you're going to leave without explanation, tell me now. I can't go through that again. Marcus's expression became serious and determined. Sarah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm done running from things that matter to me, and you matter to me. You always have. As they left the coffee shop together, Sarah felt like she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. The scared, confused girl from 5 years ago was gone, replaced by a confident woman who knew what she wanted. And what she wanted, she realized, was the chance to explore what might have been and what still might be with Marcus Rivera. They walked slowly to their cars, neither wanting the evening to end. Dinner tomorrow? Marcus asked hopefully. Yes, Sarah said without hesitation. But I get to choose the place this time. Deal? Marcus agreed. Anywhere you want to go. As Sarah drove home, she couldn't stop smiling. The mysterious warrior who had once saved her life had returned, not to rescue her again, but to be honest with her, to take responsibility for his past actions, and to ask for a chance at a future together. For the first time in 5 years, Sarah felt like her life was complete. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same parking garage where her life had changed twice, once when she was attacked, and again when Marcus had saved her. But this time, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't afraid. Marcus stood beside her, his hand warm in hers as they looked at the spot where they had first met. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't been walking by that night? Marcus asked, his voice thoughtful. Sarah squeezed his hand. I try not to, but sometimes I wonder if we were meant to find each other anyway somehow. The past 6 months had been a journey of discovery for both of them. Their first official dinner date had lasted 4 hours, with conversation flowing as easily as it had 5 years before. They talked about everything, his deployment experiences, her nursing career, their families, their dreams for the future. Marcus had been true to his word about taking things slowly. He courted her properly, with flowers and thoughtful gestures, long walks and quiet dinners. He never pressured her for more than she was ready to give, and he answered every question she had about his past, his disappearance, and his intentions. Sarah learned that Marcus had indeed been keeping track of her, but not in the creepy way she had initially feared. He had simply followed her career through the hospital's public website, reading about her volunteer work and professional achievements. He had been proud of her from afar, he told her, and had sometimes driven by the hospital just to feel closer to her. She also learned about his struggles after deployment, the nightmares, the difficulty adjusting to civilian life, the way he had thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with his emotions. He had been in therapy for 2 years, working through PTSD and survivor's guilt from losing friends overseas. I wasn't ready for a relationship then, he had explained during one of their many long conversations. I was barely ready to be a functioning human being. You deserved better than what I could have given you. But now he was ready, and so was she. Their relationship had developed naturally, built on the foundation of that profound connection they had felt years ago but strengthened by the people they had become since then. Sarah had fallen in love with the mature, thoughtful man Marcus had become, while Marcus had fallen in love all over again with Sarah's compassion, strength, and unwavering kindness. I have something to tell you, Sarah said as they stood in the parking garage. Something I've been thinking about for weeks. Marcus turned to face her, concern flickering in his eyes. What is it? Sarah smiled, reaching into her purse. I went back to the hospital archives and pulled the records from that night 5 years ago. Did you know you never gave them a last name when you brought me in? Marcus looked confused. I didn't? No, you just said you were Marcus and that you had found me in the parking garage. The nurse wrote down, Marcus, Good Samaritan, in her notes. Sarah pulled out a photocopied page from her purse. I had them make me a copy. Look at what else the nurse wrote. Marcus took the paper and read aloud. Patient repeatedly asked about her rescuer. Says she feels like she's known him forever. Patient's sister reports that patient talked about Marcus constantly during recovery. Note, patient may have developed feelings for her rescuer. Marcus looked up at Sarah, his eyes soft with emotion. You talked about me? I couldn't stop talking about you, Sarah admitted. My sister was so tired of hearing about the mysterious Marcus that she started calling you Prince Charming sarcastically. Marcus laughed, pulling Sarah closer to him. I'm no prince. No, Sarah agreed, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him softly. You're better. You're real. They had shared many kisses over the past 6 months, but this one felt different. It felt like a promise, like a commitment to the future they were building together. Sarah, Marcus said when they broke apart, I want to tell you about something I've been planning. Planning? Marcus took a deep breath, his hand moving to his jacket pocket. That night at the auction, when I saw you on stage, it wasn't just about seeing you again. It was about making up for lost time, for all the moments I missed, all the chances I didn't take. Sarah's heart began to race as Marcus pulled something from his pocket. I've been carrying this around for 2 months, waiting for the right moment, he continued, dropping to one knee right there in the parking garage where they had met. Sarah gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Sarah Chen, Marcus said, his voice strong and sure despite the tremor of emotion. 5 years ago, you showed me what love could feel like in just a few hours. Over the past 6 months, you've shown me what love actually is: patient, kind, forgiving, and real. He opened the small velvet box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. I don't want to spend another day without you in my life. I don't want to miss another moment, another conversation, another chance to tell you how much you mean to me. Will you marry me? Sarah looked down at Marcus, this man who had literally and figuratively saved her life, and felt her heart overflow with love and certainty. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Marcus, yes. Marcus stood and slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then swept her into his arms and spun her around. Sarah laughed with pure joy, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. When he set her down, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. I love you, Marcus said, framing her face with his hands. I have loved you since that first night, and I will love you for the rest of my life. I love you too, Sarah replied. All of you? The young soldier who saved me, the man who had the courage to find me again, and the person you are now. As they kissed again in that parking garage, surrounded by concrete and shadows but filled with light and love, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The attack that had seemed like the worst thing that could happen to her had actually led to the best thing: finding Marcus. Their wedding 6 months later was small but perfect, held in the hospital chapel where Marcus had stayed with her that first night. Sarah's sister was her maid of honor, and Marcus's army buddy Jake was his best man. The pediatric nurses from Sarah's unit decorated the chapel with flowers donated by local businesses who had heard their story. Mrs. Williams from the charity auction was there, beaming with pride as she watched the couple she had inadvertently helped reunite. "Best auction outcome ever," she told everyone who would listen. But the most meaningful moment came when the hospital chaplain asked if they wanted to include anything special in their vows. Marcus and Sarah had prepared something together, a promise that reflected their unique journey. "5 years ago, we found each other in a moment of darkness," Sarah said, looking into Marcus's eyes. "Today, we choose each other in the light, with full hearts and clear minds." "I promise to never leave you wondering," Marcus continued, "to communicate even when it's hard, to stay even when it's scary, and to love you not just in the dramatic moments, but in all the quiet, ordinary moments that make up a life together." As they exchanged rings and sealed their promises with a kiss, their friends and family erupted in applause. But Sarah barely heard them. All she could see was Marcus, her warrior, her love, her future. The reception was held in the hospital cafeteria, transformed with white lights and flowers into something magical. As Sarah and Marcus danced their first dance as husband and wife, she thought about all the paths that had led them to this moment. The attack, the rescue, the separation, the reunion, and now this new beginning. "Any regrets?" Marcus whispered in her ear as they swayed to the music. Sarah looked around at their friends and family, at the place where she had built her career helping children, at the man who had loved her enough to find her again and brave enough to let her go if she hadn't wanted him back. "Just one," she said with a mischievous smile. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I wish I had bid on myself at that auction. I would have outbid you and saved us both 6 months of wondering what was going to happen." Marcus threw back his head and laughed, the sound filling Sarah with the same warmth and safety she had felt 5 years ago in a hospital waiting room. "Trust me, Mrs. Rivera," he said, spinning her around on the small dance floor. "There's no amount of money in the world that could have kept me from winning you." As the evening continued and their guests celebrated around them, Sarah realized that sometimes the best love stories aren't the ones that happen quickly and easily. Sometimes the best ones are the ones that require patience, forgiveness, growth, and the courage to try again. She had bid on a stranger at a charity auction and discovered he wasn't a stranger at all. He was the other half of her heart, returning to claim his place in her life. And this time, he was there to stay. Years later, when people asked them how they knew they were meant to be together, Marcus and Sarah would exchange a look and smile. "When you find someone who saves your life twice," Sarah would say, "you don't let them go again. And when you find someone worth coming back for," Marcus would add, "you make sure they know they're worth fighting for." Their love story had begun with a bid on a stranger, but it had become so much more, a testament to second chances, the power of true love, and the beautiful unpredictability of a life lived with courage and an open heart.